Welcome in, Slump Busters. Mercifully, if you are the Phoenix Suns, your game 7 is officially over. It was bad. It was a bad one. 123-90, the final score. But obviously, anyone that watched this game or at least looked at the box score knows that it was not anywhere near that close. We're talking again about a 33-point final score difference. And to say that that wasn't close kind of gives you perspective on how bad this one was. One of the key stats Kyle and I were talking about before we hit record, 27 points for Luka in the first half. The Phoenix Suns, 27 points. Credit to them for finishing with 90, honestly. After 27 points. Not quite the worst in NBA history, but pretty bad. So now Dallas Mavericks advance. Luka, phenomenal year continues. They will play the Golden State Warriors. What was your reaction to the final score out of Phoenix and your projection for the series to come?
Well, I think the story is going to be Phoenix's collapse more than it's going to be Dallas's victory, because Dallas did enough to set themselves up for a victory in the absence of Phoenix playing like maybe the worst game 7 in the history of the NBA, or at least in my memorable lifetime. It's pretty close in that respect.
We have to do the obligatory throw this stat in there. 0-7 in game 7s for CP3. Yikes.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not going to do the antagonizing of Chris Paul. I think that's going to be kind of the story of the entire week, or at least 2 days before it leaves the news cycle, is antagonizing Chris Paul. But my guess is that Phoenix just ran out of gas at the end. Like, they went to the NBA finals last year. They played the full season this year with the best record in the league. They played 2 long series here. I'm just guessing they ran out of gas, and that's why it was such a large margin of defeat. It could be wrong in that respect, but
my only counter with that one is just give credit to the Mavericks, because since January, I always talk about how good the Celtics have been since January. The second best record in the NBA was the Dallas Mavericks, just behind the Boston Celtics. So clearly, the Mavericks are in a little bit of a roll. We had them eliminated 2 playoff series ago when Luka came into the Utah series gimpy, and now they're advancing to the Western Conference Finals, which is an all-time great playoff run for Luka.
Which, by the way, I'm super duper excited about, because I wanted the series that gets us to start investing in Luka as his generation star, because Luka is going to be his generation star. We already know this with him at 23 years old. He is what Kevin Durant was to his generation, and LeBron was to his, and Giannis is to the most recent generation. This is what Luka is going to be. When Giannis declines in play, and Embiid declines in play, and Jokic declines in play, Luka and Jason Tatum and Ja Morant and all these guys at the young, even Trae Young. I'll throw Trae Young a bone here too. All these guys are going to assume the mantle of the best players in the NBA, and it's going to be led by future 2-time MVP Luka Doncic. So I'm glad that Luka gets this one run to have us all be introduced to him, and playing the Warriors. Oh my gosh, it's going to be such a fun series. But in terms of this series, Dallas did enough to overcome Phoenix blowing the series. Like, Chris Paul played really bad the last 4 games of the series. I don't know the explanation for it. It's more believable than, say, Kevin Durant having the worst series of his basketball career, simply because Chris Paul is 38 years old, and it's understandable that his body can't endure long stretches of basketball, and he was coming off of a major injury in the middle of the season this year and a finals run last season. Like, it's more believable that Chris Paul would play like that. Devin Booker, I'm so disappointed, man. I'm so disappointed with Devin Booker, because I had him better than Jason Tatum at the start of the playoffs.
Got the stats for that one? Like, what was it?
We can throw 11, the final numbers up here.
It was
Devin
bad.
Booker and Chris Paul combined 0 for 12 to start the game. Devin Booker finishing with 11 points on 3 of 14 shooting, 0 for 4 from the 3-point line. The leading scorer at halftime was Jay Crowder with 5 points. Devin Booker, Chris Paul, and DeAndre Ayton did not make a shot from the field. You can probably find worse game 7 performances. How does it get worse than literally not making a shot? You literally can't do worse than your 3 best players literally made 0 shots.
It's kind of like
incredible.
It's kind of like that meme. Dude's just out there running. I forget who had the 000 stat line.
Is it Tony Snell?
Tony Snell? Former UNM Lobo Tony Snell with the 000 and 30 some minutes. That's kind of like what the Suns were doing from a scoring perspective. But let's shift our focus to this Mavericks Warriors series. As we talked about, it is the coming out party for Luka Doncic as he puts himself in the pantheon of great players. But to really ascend, you have to win some of these series. Guys like Steph have already won these series. Guys like Klay have already won these series. Guys like Draymond have already won these series. So obvious experience advantage for the Warriors, but they are coming out of a dogfight that they had with the Memphis Grizzlies. Memphis did not pull any punches, literally, and they pushed the Warriors, even though that one only went to game 6, you would say to the edge. I mean, that game 5 in which they beat the Warriors by 50 points still stands out as a little bit of an outlier, but something that tells you the type of games that the Warriors find themselves in and why I think this could actually be a troublesome matchup, because we came into the playoffs disrespecting guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Jalen Brunson, Maxi Kleba, these funny names that we love to say, but these are really good players. Dorian Finney-Smith really established himself as a 3-and-D player in this series against the Phoenix Suns, and one of the big reasons why they're advancing. And if I was to throw in here that the Dallas Mavericks are one of the best perimeter defenses in basketball. In fact, one of the reasons that they were on par with the Celtics in the season's second half is they were one of the better perimeter defenses. Well, what do the Golden State Warriors do well? Shoot the three. We know it. They're not quite live by the 3, die by 3, but it is one of the biggest facets of the game. If they need a bucket, their default is to have Steph or have Klay shoot a 3. If that's not available, what's their second gear? Who needs to step up? Who's that X factor for you for the Warriors, and why you think that this is a series that they can win?
I mean, it's a little bit of a cop-out, but I think it's Klay Thompson. And I know it's weird for Klay Thompson to be an X factor because Klay Thompson is a Hall of Famer. Klay Thompson is essentially the second go-to scorer on the Golden State Warriors. And if Klay Thompson can play above the supporting cast of the Dallas Mavericks, where you don't know if Dinwiddie or Dorian Finney-Smith or Reggie Bullock or Maxi Kleba is going to be the guy because they're all just kind of shooters. I also like the joke that the supporting cast of the Dallas Mavericks is basically just Green Bay Packers wide receivers. Basically, you can play a game of are they a Dallas Maverick or a Packer wide receiver with some of those names. But still at the same time, like I think it's Klay Thompson. And it's just generating enough offense to compensate for Luka and Steph Curry's back and forth. He's not the same player Luka is. Luka is a better player than Steph Curry. And I think at the same time, it might not matter because Golden State's defensive ability, it's more reliable of Klay Thompson or Jordan Poole or Andrew Wiggins being an offensive guy potentially.
I would say, though, when you mention a guy like being reliable, like a Jordan Poole isn't a guy that necessarily has pelts on the wall. We're talking about him as one of the most improved players in the NBA this season. So he doesn't have the same cachet as his other Hall of Fame teammates. And we saw him as a little bit more of a mixed bag against the Memphis Grizzlies. He wasn't that surefire shooter that he was in the Denver series. So I don't know if we're going to get the Denver Nuggets version of Jordan Poole or we're going to get the Memphis Grizzlies version of Jordan Poole, but he needs to play better. And then, of course, there is the Gary Payton factor. Our guest from KMBR, Dieter, did mention to us how moving forward, regardless of who the Golden State Warriors face, not having Gary Payton out there to guard the perimeter was going to hurt them. So that's going to change up, of course, the defensive matchups. Do you put Draymond out there to try and his best and guard Luka? Is that your best winning advantage? Because obviously we've seen it in years past where Draymond wasn't afraid to go on the perimeter and guard LeBron. Is he going to do that same kind of style against Luka, who's such a diverse scorer, has so many different ways he can change the game? Or is that going to be a waste of Draymond when you could be focusing your talents elsewhere? But who do you focus that talent on? Do you focus it on Brunson? Do you focus it on Dinwiddie? Again, Finney-Smith, who's that second guy? It's been kind of a real depth approach, and you got to give it to Jason Kidd, and you got to give it to the Mavericks for being able to adjust to so many different lineups and sets to be able to take advantage. And again, they just blew out the Suns. That was never even a game. And whether it's the Suns running out of gas or good Mavericks, the Mavericks dominated in that game. They imposed their will on the Phoenix Suns early because, of course, going into the game 7, Phoenix thought they had a chance. It wasn't until the first quarter and they saw how bad it was that Phoenix started to learn they don't really have a chance in that game.
Yeah, and I think it has to be both, right? It has to be Phoenix ran out of gas and Dallas played well. Although if Phoenix is going to play the worst game in the history of game 7s in the NBA, like I guess Dallas only had to play below average to beat them, but a 33-point game, they had to have done something. They were up 50 at one point. Like, they had to have done something right in that respect.
I want to just throw in my X factor. I think it's Jalen Brunson. I think that Jalen, when he was bad in those first 2 games against Phoenix, it was one of the more notable differences in what was the difference between the Mavericks against the Jazz and what was the difference between the Mavericks against the Suns. Jalen Brunson having a disappearing act in the first 2 games hurt them the most. And I think against a weaker Warriors defense, there's certainly one that's weaker without Gary Payton Jr., Jalen Brunson needs to be that second star for Luka. I think that needs to be a guy that you could count on for 20, because Luka is going to be the guy that obviously, I need a bucket. Luka, I'm putting in your hands. And if he scores 30, 40, whatever it needs to be, you just need Luka to have that game practically every single night if you're the Mavericks to win this series. But I need Jalen Brunson to at least give me 3 games where he's over 20 points.
I think this is the difference of the Jordan Poole versus Brunson and all these guys' argument. It's like, none of them technically have pelts on the wall. So like, in the case of Jordan Poole, someone else might take the spot for the Dallas Mavericks, and you just need a little bit from Jordan Poole. It's all an interesting matchup. The thing that, gives me pause in picking who's going to win the series is both of these teams are heavily reliant on a system offensively. So like, the strength of the Warriors is defense. Okay. Luka Doncic is one of the closest things we have to unguardable in the NBA. And if Jason Kidd has like a functioning brain, he'll do a whole bunch of switches on defense so that the Warriors can't just stick Draymond on Luka on the perimeter. They'll just do pick and rolls and switch Wiggins or switch Klay Thompson. They're just going to do everything they can to get matchups for Luka. And I think the interesting part about this series is both teams are so dependent on that system that they can play themselves out of games by not having good shooting days, whether it's Dallas and the supporting cast of Green Bay Packers wide receivers, or Golden State, who is still a good shooting team, but they're not the historically great shooting team that they once were. So they can play themselves out of games on both sides. And that means it's going to be a really interesting series as you go into game 5, game 6, game 7, because as you shorten the sample size, each game is going to get increasingly more important, because it's not about who wins a best of 7. It's about who wins game 5 or game 6 or game 7.
You're already saying it. Are you projecting a little? Is that going to be the prediction that we're going to get to a game 5, a game 6, a game 7? Kyle Ledbetter, the floor is yours. What is your prediction for the Western Conference Finals?
Here's my thought process for this series. The Golden State Warriors are going to be up 3-2 at some point in this series. Now, what happens after that? We'll have to wait and see, because game 6 is going to be in Dallas. Maybe we have a game 6 Klay Thompson. Maybe we have a Steph Curry game. Maybe Luka puts up 50-point triple doubles. Anything and everything in between is possible. If I'm going to throw out a pick, I'm going to go Warriors in 7. I don't feel strong conviction in this one, but I feel slightly stronger conviction than I do about the Heat Celtics series.
Okay. I like the veteran presence that the Warriors are going to bring to the series, but I don't love it. I feel as though there's been some notable decline from these guys, especially as the season has wore on. And coming off the series that they just had with Memphis, I feel like that took a lot out of them. And I don't know if they're going to necessarily be able to rely on some of the motivation that the Grizzlies gave them in that series that they used to blow the doors off them in a couple games there. Will the trash talking of Luka kind of get in their heads? We'll see. But I guess one other big thing I should ask you, over under on Luka putting up 50 in at least one game.
I'll go over. If you gave me 45, I'd feel very strongly about over.
Okay. My pick, I'm going to go upset here. I'm going to go with those young Dallas Mavericks. I feel like we're seeing a LeBron-esque ascension for Luka, and I feel as though this is his time. I hope it's not his time to win a title, because I have investment in the Eastern Conference, but I do think that it's his time to lead a team to a finals appearance based off all the things he does and all the things he does well. I think the Suns were a tougher matchup, and they got past the Suns. Going into the Warriors, I think what they do well, again, their perimeter defense, and the Warriors' propensity to rely on the 3-point shot is going to be the ultimate demise, because when they can't get a bucket via the 3, I think that they're not going to be able to get a bucket anywhere else on this quick adjusting, fast switching Dallas Mavericks team. Jason Kidd's done a great job with this team. The role players are rounding into form. Whether they play well on the road, I think that's going to be a differentiating factor in who wins the series, because they were kind of weak on the road against Phoenix, but obviously came up to play in game 7. Luka's going to lead this team to the NBA Finals. 7 games. I'm going to say 7 games. So hedging a little because 7 games, that's all I could go to. But 7 games, Dallas Mavericks. That is my prediction. Warriors of 7 versus Mavericks in 7. Juju Talk Sports, Kyle Ledbetter. Stay safe, happy, healthy, and hit that subscribe button. We will see you on the next one.